one another and make some valuable connections. So first I want to start with a shout out to both Anne and Martha, who have worked very hard at bringing these roundtables back in person after the pandemic. This is now our second, so thank you very much for your work here. I think Martha's outside. She didn't even hear the nice thing I said about her. So today, what we're going to do, I'm going to start us off with a little bit of a presentation, talk about some of the effects of digital transformation and how we can take advantage of things like automation. In particular, AI is a big hot button topic that I'll talk about and touch on in my presentation here. And then we'll have some table discussions. We've got a couple of questions set up that we can, again, kind of learn from one another and then share with the group at large. And then we'll have a lunch. I'm sure all of you are looking forward to that as well. All right. So diving right in here with digital transformation, I kind of break it down into 6 kind of big factors that come in there. There's the changing buyer demographics. There's the benefits of an improved reach. Obviously, if you've got a website, you can get to anybody anywhere. But that also comes with some increased competition. So really being able to set yourself apart from that, digital marketing has never been more important. Sorry, it's my shameless plug. And then talk about a couple other factors. Again, things like security. You're not a cybersecurity agency or anything of that nature, but there are some risks that you should be aware of. And then obviously we'll talk about technology and AI. So first up, buyer demographics. So my first bullet's a little bit misleading. I realize I need to figure out how to phrase this better, but buyers aren't necessarily getting younger. Buyers are staying the same age, just younger generations are getting older. So like Chad and myself, we're both millennials. We are now in that position where we are now making the decisions for our company and making those buying decisions. So we both grew up with the internet. It's kind of our #1 source. Anytime anybody asks me a question, I know I'm pulling out a phone if I don't know the answer and I'm Googling it. And I also want a lower barrier of entry, especially for contacting. Like I want to form, I want to chat. I want to basically take some steps before I take the time to meet with you and make those kind of connections there. So a couple of stats to support that. Again, millennials are now making about 73% of all B2B buying decisions, and over 70% of those B2B decision makers prefer remote or digital interactions. Now again, some of this is heavily influenced by the pandemic, the fact that we all kind of had to learn how to do business via Zoom and from our couches, in my case when we first started, or in our home offices. People want to be able to make those connections with low friction, low points of entry. So how do we take advantage of that? So one of the things that I'd recommend, if you have a CRM, something like Salesforce, something like HubSpot, review that contact information. Or if you don't, talk to your salespeople and try to figure out, okay, who are we selling to? What kind of conversations are you having? What kind of questions are they asking? And how can we better support you in your roles there? How do we make sure that we're connecting with them as opposed to who we've traditionally done business with? Make sure you have forms on your site and make sure that they work. One thing that I think every salesperson, at least I can speak to our previous owner at Top Floor, he wanted every bit of information. If you could have got your social security number from a form, he would have taken it. Consider altering what's required. I know I get to a certain point where if you're asking me for my direct phone number, I get a little wary. I don't want to all of a sudden get spammed with phone calls constantly. So test some things out. Obviously get enough information that's valuable for you. But don't be off-putting where you're asking for, again, just a little bit too much of a personal information. Let your sales team follow up, let them get that information through future conversations. And then another recommendation would be to look into some live chat options. So we'll talk about this a little bit with AI, but there are some pretty cool options out there that if you don't have anybody available to man that chat at that time and answer the questions that come through, they can do some, there's really basic, if somebody uses this phrase, point them to this article type responses. Or there's, hey, give us your information and we'll contact you later once somebody is available type answer. So live chats come a long way. It's a good way to, again, just start the conversation. You might be able to capture somebody who may have just left and gone to another website. So again, look into some of those options. All right, improved reach. So again, businesses are more willing than ever to do business with vendors, suppliers, outside of their kind of main region or area. So communicating your ability to serve that area becomes a lot more important in your digital footprint. I think, again, being in SEO is my background. I'm sure you've all seen those sites that are like, hey, we are the best Milwaukee agency for Milwaukee SEO services in the Milwaukee area. Those kinds of things I'm not recommending by any stretch. But you do want to be able to communicate that you are, yes, you're located in Milwaukee, you're located in New Berlin, or wherever, but you still serve nationwide. You've got clients all over. You can communicate that via the clients that you work with, case studies, things of that nature. But this also applies to potential customers as well as employees. Obviously, if you're in manufacturing, you need someone to put something together. Remote's not an option for you, but maybe sales support, administration, things like that maybe don't necessarily need somebody there. It does open up the talent pool greatly. I know finding people to work is very challenging. So limiting yourself to a geographic area, if you don't necessarily need to, can potentially inhibit your ability to find a good piece. And then this one's just for me because, man, does it suck. But be aware of the cost of doing business outside of your area. I hired an employee in New York, and I think I'm still paying fines for things I didn't know I needed to do. So do some research. All right, so some things that you can kind of look at is with improved reach. So define your potential target areas. So one quick thing that you can do is just take a look at some of the current clients that you have that maybe fall outside of that. I know in talking with Chad and the conversations that we've had, we've got clients in Colorado, we've got clients in Northern Illinois, we've got clients in California. Talk to them, figure out why did you pick us? What can we do? What was our advantage that made you choose someone over someone local? And see if that's something that you can potentially grow upon. So along with that, then you can start to identify the competition in that area. And there's some things that you can do with that, not just say, okay, I know I'm up against X, Y, and Z, and this is what they're good at. But if they're doing that really well over there and nobody in your area is doing it, you can get inspired and say, okay, maybe that's a service that we can offer, or that's a value add that we never thought about before. And you can bring it to your area. And then take a chance. I hate saying things like SWOT analysis, but kind of got to do a SWOT analysis. Analyze how your quality, how your service, how your price, and most importantly, honestly, is speed and availability. How do those all factor in? There was a survey done of B2B buyers, and actually fast delivery of the product or service, or even just the availability to get me the product when I need it, were the top two priorities. Price was third. So price is still important, but it's not the number one factor these days, especially if there's supply chain issues. On the recruiting side of things, so this was a 2022 survey, finding and attracting employees and then retaining qualified employees were the top two priorities for people, both in the 80% of those surveyed. So utilize those learnings and processes from the pandemic, and how can you then bring in remote employees on a full-time basis and with the understanding that they will be remote, and to be able to bring those in. And what we found is that a lot of jobs in particular have specific job boards. So again, we do website design and development, we do search engine marketing. All of those industries, they have websites that are dedicated to helping people find jobs. You can post jobs there, you can find people that are looking for work, you can even find some freelancers to test them out for a little bit. So search those out, but things like Indeed, LinkedIn, Upwork, all of those can be effective as well that aren't necessarily niche to what you're looking for. And then, like I said, when hiring employees from new states, make sure you know all of the fees that you need to pay. Stay compliant. So, again, next steps here, define that potential target as well as the local competition there. Interview your current customers, find out why they chose you. And then develop a sales and marketing strategy that's going to support that. So once you found out that, okay, it was our availability, it was our speed to delivery, how do you develop a sales strategy that's going to be able to support that? Account-based marketing is very effective in this, being able to identify companies in that area, whether you're using LinkedIn or other social media, and being able to connect with those people and get yourself in front of them can be extremely effective. And then, again, determine which positions internally can be filled remotely. It removes a headache of having to find people, especially as people, as the Great Resignation, is that what they were calling it? Especially as people start to filter out and find new jobs. Being able to spread out your wings and be able to pull people in from other areas can be very valuable. All right, flip side of the coin, increased competition. So you won't be the only one doing that. You're not the only one looking externally and finding where you can find new people. They're going to be looking into your area as well. I like to view things, maybe I'm an optimist, but I like to view it as an opportunity as opposed to a challenge. So look at what they're doing online and look at what's working. And then could that give you an advantage in an underserved area? So, for example, if you can find competitors that are engaging in similar marketing activities, I know that we like to put on events like this, webinars, we like to be active in our blog posts. We can find competition that's doing that And then we can see how well are people engaging with that. So if they're posting YouTube videos, we can see how many views it has, how many likes it has. If they're posting to social media and promoting their content, there are some tools out there that will actually let us know if they're promoting anything via ads. Those are all things that you can take some time to research and see, okay, what's engaging, and is it the topic that they're talking about, or is it the medium that they're using that's that engaging? And that can affect your marketing strategy. So one other tool, this one's a little bit geeky, specific to search engines, but it's called SEMrush or SEMrush, depending on who you ask. It allows you to look at things like keyword rankings for your competition, for your website as well. So you can kind of see how you compare to others. And then specifically take a look at things like blog posts. So you might find a blog, be like, hey, this is great. Look at all this valuable information. But if search engines aren't ranking it, that means no one else is really finding it. So being able to take a look at that and do a little bit of competitive research and how they're performing online can help inform your strategy as well. So again, next steps here. Complete that analysis of your competitors' online marketing activities. Find out what they're doing. We honestly just made a chart and put little checks. Yep, they're doing blog posts, they're doing videos, they're doing social media, they're doing events, and be able to reference that and keep an eye on it as things go through. So identify those opportunities, whether they're topics, applications, or even a physical location. And then if any of those opportunities fall within your area of expertise, that could be a potential new campaign for your sales and marketing strategy. All right, shameless plug time. Digital marketing, incredibly important. Website is your first impression so many times. Anytime somebody recommends, even if it's somebody to do like our mosquito applications, first thing I'm doing is I'm going to their website and making sure they're a legit operation. I look at their reviews, things of that nature. Also, e-commerce is showing strong growth, not just from B2C, but from B2B as well. And then so much research is done prior to that initial contact. You may think, oh, well, they picked up the phone and called me. That's how they found us. Well, chances are they looked at your website, they did some research, they looked at reviews, and then they decided to call you. So those are the kind of things that you probably ask. I know I'll plug our client Tekra. They do a great job of finding all that information out to know what's working really well for them. So in order to support this, so I'm not just trying to sell you, over 50% of B2B queries are done via smartphones. So I think we've made the push over the years, mobile first or mobile friendly, all those topics that you hear out there. It's not just enough for your website to load on a phone, it has to function really well. So functionality is that top priority when evaluating a provider. Think of a website that you've gone to, it took too long to load, or you clicked a button and it didn't do anything. My initial reaction is to yell at my phone and then hit back and then find another website immediately. So make sure that you're testing those things out. It's not just, hey, it loads, look at it, it looks great. Does it function well? Does it load quickly? Those are the kind of things. 73% of people are saying that functionality is crucial when evaluating a provider. On the e-commerce side of things, so this is a study that's looking at B2B, specifically e-commerce market size. So in 2020, the market size was $7.3 trillion. They estimate that by 2030, it'll be $33 trillion. So as you can imagine, people are not only just going online to buy pants and shoes and whatever, they're going online and even in some cases buying some larger pieces of equipment online. I think what you can do to kind of start off nice and easy is if you've got consumables or parts, things that need to be replaced or used regularly, you can look at getting those e-commerce and then start to look at, okay, are we able to track inventory? Are we able to track sales of larger products? We have a client that sells online, but then what they do is after that, especially if it's a big piece of equipment is sold, a salesperson will follow up and just make sure that it works for their application, it works for what they need, because the last thing you want to do is ship something out to them, it doesn't work and they gotta send it back. So there's still ways to kind of mix e-commerce with traditional sales that can be effective for your business. So, and then again, now doing the research first, over 70% of B2B buyers spend over half their time, so it's 70% of the time it works half the time. Half of their research is done online. That includes websites, search engines, videos, and social media. So when it comes to a next step for this, make sure that your social media properties match what your website looks like. Again, if there's any moment of confusion between I'm looking at a website, I'm evaluating a vendor, let me see what they do online, and you're using an old logo or the colors don't match, or you're like, hey, maybe they're called Top Floor, and this one they're called Top Floor Technologies, and that, is it the same company or not? You want to eliminate that. So even if you're not active on it, if it is out there and it's published, just make sure it looks right. One other tool that's really great for if we move back to functionality and mobile experience is actually from Google. It's called Google Search Console. If you don't have that installed on your website or verified, I should say, you should look at doing that because they have two reports. There's a page experience and a mobile usability report that can at least guide you in the right direction and say, okay, hey, there's some issues with page speed, there's issues with text being too small, there's issues with functionality or things that break. There's some good information in there. As I mentioned before, explore some areas of your business that could support e-commerce if you don't want to make the full plunge. Again, things like parts and consumables. And then develop content that's geared towards your target audience. So create contents at all stages. I think all of us, so much content is created, we call it top of funnel. We want recognition, we want awareness, but then it kind of drops off. What if they're already aware of you and they want to know about a specific service and its value? Are you developing case studies? Are you developing or gathering testimonials and things like that that can support their decision at every step of the way? All right, so security. So I'm gonna say it again. We are not a cybersecurity agency. This is not a cybersecurity how-to, but you should still be aware of some of the risks that are associated with a digital transformation, things like distributed teams or clientele outside the area. You should educate your team on how to respond to requests for sensitive information. I can't tell you how many emails still come from Jim Bernthal, if you know who that is, our previous owner, that are asking me to buy 50 Apple iTunes gift cards for him and to not contact him because he's real busy. So look out for those. How do you respond to those? 9 times out of 10, just ignore it. And then also, if it does seem legit, get multiple points of verification. Say, I'll follow up with you via phone call, and just make sure that that information is, again, verified multiple times before any of that information is shared. And then secure your computers and files. So again, phishing schemes are never protected. Yeah, what's up?
What about with security with like with WordPress, it has plugins and like Drupal has modules and stuff. Is there security issues with those related to updated?
Yeah. So I mean, the internet technology is changing constantly. The nice thing about communities like WordPress and Drupal is that there are developers that regularly look at these things and changes that are there and look for vulnerabilities. They'll release patches that you can then install. So that would be important to keep an eye on and monitor and update on a regular basis, just so that there's not some plugin that you're using, especially marketing. Unfortunately, plugins get targeted a lot because there's just a lot of them out there, and a lot of people question what they do. But you want to make sure that you're staying on top of those and that you're verifying that these are legitimate developers. There's not backdoors into the information that's back there. The other thing that's really important too, if you do collect information on your website, things like forms, make sure that information, especially if it's credit card information, you're using a payment portal that's actually storing that information. It's not just stored on your website because you can be liable for that information. But good question. So yeah, again, making sure your team knows how to respond to phishing requests. Just again, skepticism is important, validation is important, and then follow up via conventional communication, things like phone calls, just to make sure that that information is legit. As far as the computer hardware itself, especially if you have a distributed team, things like a VPN, virtual private network, maybe, or a cloud server, just take the extra steps, things like multi-factor authentication. I mean, I hate it more than anybody when I have to get a text message on my phone, but if it means that my identity and my money is secure, I will do it. Then make sure that things like regular password changes, firewalls, antivirus softwares, all those are available and up to date on the team. And then any tools that you use as well. We use endless amounts of tools. Virtually all of them are 100% in the cloud. So again, making sure that you're regularly kind of auditing access to those tools and making sure that who has access should have access, especially with turnover, client changes, things of that nature. So I'm going to push for you to meet with an IT company and insurance as well when it comes to cybersecurity, cyber insurance, and make sure that you're covered. They're much more qualified to ask the right questions and get the information that will let you know what you need than I am. And then communicate with the team, educate them, just keep on top of it, and then review the tools that you have, especially if you're utilizing cloud storage. You want to make sure your data is secure. Okay, big topic here, AI. So is Skynet self-aware? We're going to talk about what is AI at its current state, some practical applications of it, as well as some shortcomings. So I think it's just as important to know what it can't do as what it can. So the main piece I'm going to talk about right now is ChatGPT. There are a lot of other technologies out there, but this is the one that I think is making the biggest waves, at least in our industry. And the biggest reason why is that it is a natural language processor, which means I can ask it a question and it will give me a response as though I'm talking to somebody across the table from me. So it's fed data and trained how to respond. So the way that OpenAI, which is the company that developed ChatGPT, worked, I think they basically downloaded the internet, I think it was October of 2019, and used that as its data set. So ChatGPT is not actually hooked up to the open internet, so that would be a nightmare. And then it's worked with its engineers to give it prompts, analyze its responses, and be able to, again, it's called supervised learning. Train it. Was this a good response? Hey, I was actually looking for this. My intent behind this question was X. So again, it interprets those inputs, tries to use some context, and understand what your intent is. So again, so it's a little bit more conversational as opposed to just dry outputs. So some practical applications, things that you can do right now. We've already talked about customer service and chatbots. I think there are some tools out there right now that will, again, I hesitate to call it AI, but we'll call it a machine learning tool. We'll be able to analyze things like your website content or prompts that you give it and be able to give responses to people via chat. So customer service is a big one. Data analysis is great, especially big data. If you don't want to sit through an entire thing and learn Python and learn SQL and learn how to analyze all that, a lot of AI tools out there can do that as well. Another really important thing, I think, is technical tutorials. One thing that was pretty cool, I've been testing out a number of tools, is being able to say, hey, I'll use the tool SEMrush as an example, show me how to be able to run keyword data through this and analyze my competition. And not only was it able to find that, it was able to give me a step-by-step what it did within the tool, and I was able to copy that information, and I could use it as a repository. Now again, you want to be able to test that, but it was still saved me a ton of time, frankly. I was only able to tweak a little things here and there. And then the last thing is not necessarily here yet, but research is potentially an application for AI. As I mentioned right now, I don't think there is an AI technology that is open to the internet. Bing let Bard loose and it failed. So I think everybody's still in that kind of training phase, but the fact that it's able to have that access to that much information, be able to pull information in for you, and then you can ask follow-up queries, research is potentially a good technology or an application for AI. So some shortcomings. So ChatGPT can create some very plausible sounding but incorrect answers. So to the layman, they might be like, oh yeah, that sounds legit. But then if you ask somebody who knows what they're doing, they'll be like, no, that's completely wrong. All they're trying to do is understand what you want. Essentially, they're trying to predict, based on your response, what are you looking for me to say back to you? So it's kind of a sociopath in that way. You also may need to rephrase or tweak some of the prompts that you have. I know that I've come up with, if I use the word like analyze versus interpret, you'll get two wildly different responses. So it can be very sensitive to how you phrase a prompt or a question. And then it can also overuse phrases or overly fluffy responses. Part of that is because of the training that's used. If you think about how you talk, there's probably phrases that you use regularly in conversation. So if I'm a trainer, I'm probably going to then rub off on the tool that I'm training. So it can overuse and kind of be a little bit more verbose than you necessarily need it to be. And then the last piece that's a little bit of a limitation here is it has to guess your intent versus being able to ask a clarifying question. So again, if I say, hey, analyze this data for me, you can't ask a follow-up question. You can't say, well, do you want this in ascending order? Do you want it in descending order? Do you want it by most frequent to least frequent? It will just kick something off based on what it thinks I want. So there's still some limitations there. The last 2 points here are a little bit more nebulous, but are still equally as important. Things like bias. So again, if I'm the trainer and I have a specific bias, the technology that I'm training is going to have that as well. Also, since this is machine learning, it learns from the other prompts that are given to it and the follow-up questions that come from it. So we are actually part of, if you're using ChatGPT, we are part of the training right now. So how we interact with the tool, the follow-up questions that we ask are going to influence how it then interacts with people in the future. And then the final point here is that there really is no truth. So again, we can rate responses. We can say, hey, that was a good response, or hey, you're off base. But really, there's no validated source or ultimate truth that I can say, no, 100% this is the correct answer. It just gives its best estimate as to what that is. So before we move on, I want to just, again, with AI, do your research. Last thing you want to do is just pick a tool at random and say, let's run with it. You want to test it with some basic tasks at first. Again, this is all training at this point. Figure out, can it do what I need it to do on a consistent basis without supervision over time? And then if you do decide to implement, make sure that you increase the amount of time it takes to review and edit. So if you're using it for something like content generation, whereas it may have taken you 4 hours to write a post and then an hour of editing, probably going to reverse that. Probably take an hour to get it all done, and then a ton of, again, research, validation, and follow-up will be needed from the review and editing process. Okay, so before discussion, I want to just give you guys a chance. If you have any questions for me now, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'll get into the table discussions.